Hi guys, welcome to Shell Charity. My name is Michelle and I'm a graduate engineer. I really wanted to create a space for STEM students from the point of view of somebody who just came out of that really kind of long process of engineering degree, looking for jobs, and luckily enough for me, I managed to get a job at the back end of my university experience. A lot of the content that I will be producing will be based around STEM careers and also lifestyle. So without further ado, I'm going to jump straight into today's topic, which is going to be based around how to best prepare for application season. So preparing for application season in STEM is quite similar to most disciplines. However, there were a few things that I just wanted to highlight that would probably help you in terms of figuring out the kind of companies that you want to apply for and just kind of mentally preparing yourself. First point that I have is whether you are going to be applying for graduate programs or for direct entry. The key differences between the two is that graduate programs are training programs which are run by the company. The whole point of a graduate program is so that you yourself have an opportunity to go to different departments, try out different roles and exit the program having a good feel as to where it is you want to kind of base your career around, and whether that's in kind of a more technical role or business role, you have the opportunity to move around. Meanwhile, a direct entry role is you enter that team, you have a direct line manager, and you're expected to stay in that team for however many months or years. So you aren't seen as a trainee, you are seen as a full-time permanent member of staff. So there are quite a few pros and cons to either. It just depends on kind of the stage of where you are at in terms of knowing what it is that you want to do with your career. So I'm going to use myself as an example. During the end of university, I started thinking about kind of applying for roles, and I was very keen on graduate programs. The reason being was because I kind of didn't actually know what area of engineering that I wanted to go into. I had done a bachelor's degree in chemical engineering and a master's degree in advanced chemical engineering, but I still wasn't sure that chemical engineering was for me. So I applied to lots and lots of different graduate programs. Some were 3 years, some were a year and a half. My graduate program is 18 months long. However, I can choose to kind of leave the program anytime between a year to 2 years, the idea being that I would apply to a full-time role within a team. So direct entry is a bit different. It's a lot easier to get into a direct entry role because that is just your bog standard role that you would apply for, as opposed to graduate programs where you would kind of have to go through a very rigorous application process. Let's say a company of 5,000 employees, they would only hire, let's say, 200 graduates a year. Meanwhile, direct entry roles, there's lots of them. In terms of career progression, you get quicker career progression in the sense of, because you are seen as a permanent member of staff, you would get the same perks as permanent members of staff. Meanwhile, when you're on a graduate program, it's kind of like in a little bubble. You have kind of like a set salary. Whether or not it goes up or down is at the discretion of the company and how they run that program. My current salary, I think it only goes up once a year in line with inflation, but I wouldn't necessarily apply for promotions whilst I'm in a graduate program. However, with an entry role program, if I think that I've been working to a high standard and I should be promoted, then I could apply for promotion. Main differences in terms of application is graduate programs, as I mentioned before, have a very long-winded application process. I am talking online application, online tests, initial telephone interviews, video interviews, assessment centres. It differs with companies. I know companies that would make students go through a 6-stage process, meanwhile other companies would only do a 3-stage process. It is a very long-winded process and it does take a lot of your time. Direct entry positions are ones where you submit your CV or covering letter. If the hiring manager likes it, he gives you a call, sets up an interview, sorted. So again, very different in a sense of how much time would you want to spend on applications. Actually, if you do know what you want to be doing, or if you have an idea of the area that you want to be working in, is it worth you spending hours on graduate program applications or actually looking for direct entry level applications? So the next point that I kind of wanted to highlight was tracking your applications. Now, if you are like me and you are quite, organized, slight bit of PTSD, you want to be able to kind of track your applications and how far you get through each application. And the main purpose of this is just for continuous improvement. And it sounds super cliche, but it is so important. You're going to be applying to lots and lots of companies at the same time. And, you know, chances are is that you won't be getting offers from every single, you know, one of those companies. You may do an assessment center and you may not get the job, or you may do an online test that you found really hard and, you know, you stumble there. Being able to kind of track your application and keeping note as to the stage that you get to for that company helps you to go back, assess and figure out what are the areas that I need to improve in. So I suggest creating an application tracker. I created one on Excel, very simple. You would have the name of the company. After that, you would write kind of when you applied for it. And then in the headings columns, you would kind of put each stage. And then what I did was and then after every 4 or so weeks, I would go back on this tracker. Obviously, I would be keeping it updated, but I would have a good review as to how far I was getting. And I would try to spot some patterns. So for example, if you kept getting phased out at the application stage, then clearly you need to go back and you need to check over your CV. If you kept getting phased out at the assessment center stage, then clearly you need to more practice in assessment centers. So planning your time and managing your own expectations. As I mentioned before, application season is very long-winded. So as I am filming this video, it is January, well, mid to end Jan, and you know, application season started about 4 months ago. So it starts around so August to September, depending on the company. Most applications go online, most roles go online around October, November time. This is something that you kind of want to jump on because you increase your chances of getting a role the earlier you apply for roles, because at that time all of these roles are available. The longer you wait, the less your chances would basically start to decrease. So just kind of mentally preparing yourself in a sense of you are still at uni, you still have deadlines, you still have a social life, you still have all these other activities that you're doing. And on top of that, you also have to balance applications. And at first it may seem like a case of, oh, how many can I apply to today? Oh, I can apply to 5 companies today, cool, sorted. However, you should also be considering the fact that, you know, a lot of people are applying for these roles. You need to spend your time, you need to commit your time. You need to basically be treating these applications as another module in your degree, you know? You need to add it to your study planner, you need to add it to your timetable. You need to be giving yourself that time and that focus undisturbed to be applying to these companies and giving yourself the best shot of securing a role. If a company does decline you for that application cycle, chances are is that you'd have to wait until the next application cycle to apply again. So you don't really want to be messing things up, especially if you're in a position where, let's say you've only just started applying for graduate roles in January. A lot of the roles have been filled up. So I would recommend 1 to 2 hours per application. Reason being is that you are able to kind of put in enough detail in your CV and in your cover letter so that you don't get phased out in that initial stage. I will be making another video in terms of what you should be including in your application and kind of how the application stage works in terms of you kind of clicking onto the company's website and filling out your details and uploading your documents, etc. So I won't be covering this now purely because there's a lot of stuff around it. However, just give yourself enough time and just mentally plan that. Don't try to rush the application, and if it seems like you are rushing, then just stop and take it back, try again tomorrow when you can really sit down and focus on it. So those 3 top tips again are kind of things that I considered before starting my long application process. I think I read an article saying that the average graduate applies for 14 roles before they get an offer. And it seems like a lot. To be fair, when I first heard 14, I thought it sounded like it was too few. Because I think I applied for about maybe 25 to 30 before I got my role. So I guess it's a case of you need to be able to kind of plan your time in advance. You need to be able to focus on the kind of roles that you want to apply for so that when you start the role, you're not shocked, you know? You don't want to start a graduate program thinking that you're a full-time employee and you're supposed to stay in one team, and then all of a sudden you have to kind of rotate every 4 to 5 months. Obviously, I'm hoping that you do read the job description, but a lot of people kind of apply for direct entry roles thinking that they're graduate programs, and actually in essence they're not. I'll be creating more videos on how to tackle the different stages of the application process. So that goes online application, psychometric online applications, psychometric tests, assessment centres, telephone interviews, you name it. I will strive to create a video to give you, you know, little things that you can be doing just to increase your chances of securing a role during application season. Don't think that applying now is too late. 100%, the earlier you do things, the better. Don't leave things until last minute. Thanks for watching.